With that, next we have our guest speaker for today, Jon Stout, who is manager of Sonoma County Airport. And Jon has been here before. I believe the last time was 2017. So that's what I was told. So a lot has changed since then, and we look forward to hearing all about it. And I know things are rapidly changing out there. So Jon, take it away.
Good afternoon, and thanks for the invite. We're starting to get back out on the speaking tour, so there has been a lot of changes. I didn't realize it's been 2017. We've been very busy the last 2 years, even though we've had COVID, so we've had a lot of ups and downs, but I'm here to give you information on where we're going at the airport. And for me, it's easier if you ask your questions as I'm going through it. That way I have the information either on screen or we can talk about it when we're in that area of the presentation. I'd like to start out with some of the historical information. The airport is an enterprise fund. So what that means is we're a division within Transportation and Public Works, and we do pay our own way. We do not rely on any county tax dollars. We do not get support from the county general fund. Our budget for this year is about $10 million. That is generated through all the activities on the airport. Our largest revenue source, if you've flown out, we thank you for using our parking lots. The parking lot does generate about $2 million a year for us. Our next largest revenue source is our hangar rents. The airport has about 285 hangars on the airport, and we own 95% of them. And so it's a significant source of revenue. And then after that, they kind of dissipate fairly quickly, but we do charge a percentage of gross to our commercial tenants. So like the rental cars, they pay us a 10% commission, and they pay us about $800,000 a year. We charge landing fees, fuel flow fees, ground rents, and just a whole host of other activities on the airport. Our capital project this year, that budget's about $20 million, and a lot of that is the terminal project since it's still active. This slide shows some of our history on operations going back to early 2000s. We're nowhere near where we used to be at the airport. Prior to the 2008 recession, the airport was in that 130 to 140,000 total operations. An operation is one takeoff or one landing. We bottomed out during COVID at about 68,000. And last year we were just over 90,000. So we are rebounding and we're seeing traffic return. Just kind of throw it out for a trivia question. Anybody have an idea what our peak year for operations might be? Year? No, which year?
2017.
2004.
Way back. Our peak year actually was 1978. That was the heyday of general aviation, and the airport experienced right around 205,000 total operations. So we were less than half of our peak. Getting into the air service, that's the biggest activity at the airport, at least on a impact to the community. Most of our operations are general aviation. So the private aircraft owners or the corporate operators, they account for 90% of our total traffic. But in terms of airline operations, we do have 4 partners. Alaska is our largest. They're flying to Burbank, Los Angeles, Portland, San Diego, Seattle, and Orange County. They came into our market in 2007. They've been a great partner of ours. And they will start flying 737 service to Seattle in October. So we're very excited about that. It will mean a reduction of frequency, however, but it'll be nice to have the 3 class cabin and more seats. So that'll be a big help. American Airlines, they came in 2017 to Phoenix, and then they added Dallas. They were up to 4 flights a day. Right now they're at 3. So they do seasonal fluctuations. Dallas, during their entire time at the airport, has only been seasonal. They will suspend that operation early January, and it'll come back in March. Avella is a relatively new carrier at the airport. They started a little over a year and a half ago. They are now our 2nd largest carrier at the airport. They're doing Burbank and Las Vegas. And on November 11th, they'll start service to Palm Springs twice a week. So we're very excited about that. We're also talking to them about future opportunities. They're looking mostly at markets that are within about 650 miles. So we're talking about Boise, Eugene, and some other options in the West. For that to happen, they need to get a few more airplanes. And then lastly, we do have United, but it's going to be a short term. They came back as well in 2017 with service to San Francisco. They added Denver. And then during COVID, they suspended all operations. They brought back San Francisco last fall. And we had Denver on the schedule. They kept pushing it back. We'd get close, they push it, get close again, push it again. And right now they're having a lot of struggles on their regional aircraft. They don't have enough pilots and crew to fly everything they would like to do. And Denver is probably one of the most impacted operations. And so with that, since Santa Rosa, San Francisco is the shortest flight in their network, they would rather use those resources elsewhere at the moment. And so they will be suspending all operations, well, not suspending, canceling at the end of October. So they will be leaving the airport. In discussions with them, we do believe Denver is still a very high priority. They just don't have the ability to do it. And they're hoping to be back in Santa Rosa within 2 years. 2022 saw a huge return of traffic for the airport. We're projecting finishing the year with about 835,000 seats and about 625,000 passengers for the year. That'll be up about 40% over 2019, which is our peak year. Future opportunities, given all the pilot shortages and struggles that every carrier is having, not a lot of movement with our partners. But we do talk to them on a regular basis about new markets. We were trying to get Chicago, find another carrier for Denver, Boise, Eugene's on the list. We'd like to get to Austin. And of course, Hawaii has been very requested, but our runway is a little bit short for right now for the aircraft equipment on the West Coast. We thought we were going to get Alaska to do it this year, but after they did the analysis, they informed us they can't do it. And the reason for that is last fall, DOT increased the average weight that the airlines have to use for an American. It increased their weight by 20 pounds. So when you add 20 pounds to the 160 to 170 people on the plane, they would have had to have blocked out about 30 seats on the aircraft. And they weren't, that's where the profit was. And so with that, they said they can't do it. There are airplanes that could do Santa Rosa to Hawaii and to New York. It's the Airbus 220. It's a 130-seat aircraft. Delta uses them, Breeze Airways uses them. But right now, we don't fit any of their strategic plans for the West Coast. So we will be continuing to talk to them. Yes, sir.
Is there room for expansion on the runway at the airport?
There would be room. We would have to relocate a couple roads, Sanders roads, and depending on the final locations, Mark West. But there's not the political will to extend it. It took 20 years to get the 885 feet we got back then. And the last extension also cost $54 million. So, no, so we have to find an operator that has an aircraft that would work.
Is Alaska upgrading their from the Embraers to something else?
So Alaska is going to upgauge, that's what the airlines call it, the Seattle route. One flight a day will be on a 737-800 with 159 seats, and there are 3-class configuration. And then 4 days a week, they'll have Embraer 175. So on those 4 days, we'll have 2 flights a day to Seattle. So that starts early October.
How much lead time does the carriers give you, whether they're going to cancel or they're going to suspend?
The question was, how much lead time do we get if they're going to cancel or suspend? United started letting us know they had concerns about staying in the market in June. And it was about a month ago that they made the decision to, they originally called it a suspension. We asked them to work with us to find alternatives. They started working with a company called Landline, which is a bus company. and they're doing bus service to close-in markets at Denver. And they were looking to expand that option to other markets, and we explored that with them to keep San Francisco on the map and also to keep their presence at the airport. But they still have too much to do with PUC and TSA for that to work, and so they decided just to cancel.
So Americans flying until January, you said, to Dallas?
To Dallas, yes. Phoenix is year-round.
Do you do any coordination? Like a friend of mine was trying to fly from the Bay Area to Connecticut. And he said it was just so terrible. He was waiting 4 hours and then he had to wait another day. Is there any coordination between the flights out of Santa Rosa to the other cities where they need to get to another flight that they can get on
Yeah.
without waiting 6 hours?
There are attempts to coordinate. We are only one of their points on a map, and we're not a very big point on most airlines' maps, so we don't have a lot of pull with the carriers. For those markets like Dallas and Phoenix, which are good connection points, we do work with them as much as we can to encourage them to time it so it matches a bank going to the East Coast. But then they put it into their sausage grinder with their, I think Phoenix has 250 flights a day for American. And right now we have one. We don't get a lot of consideration. And it boils down to, this is when the plane can come to your market. Do you want it or not? I have others that would be happy to take it. So unfortunately, it's not where we would like it. And it does make a big difference in the airlines load factors out of Santa Rosa. If you can't connect in a convenient fashion, it's about a 90-minute window that most people are okay with. And the farther you get away from that acceptance drops drastically. Yes, sir.
I recently booked a flight to Phoenix through Alaska, and I see that it's with Mesa, it's a partner of American Eagle. Do they still extend the wine, free case of wine on those flights?
Yeah,
That's a good question, because Alaska does that, but it's actually being flown by American, so you would go to the American Airlines ticket counter, and American does not do that program. So that is what they call a code share. So Alaska and American do have an agreement on certain markets where they will sell each other's tickets. And so I unfortunately don't have an answer for that.
Do you have any plans to remodel the baggage pit?
I'll get that later in the presentation. Yes, sir.
I have a comment and a question. First, comment, Eric.
I want to give a shout out to Avalo Airlines. I've flown them now 3 times to Vegas, and so professional, so friendly, and so easy to work with. Our last flight, we had to make a last-minute change to the flight. No penalties, no nothing. Just go on the website and say, I want to change my flight. So just, I mean, it's a new airline, but they really, I think, are a great asset to STS.
Thank you.
The question is, we just flew in a couple of weeks ago. I'm looking at the terminal and they're saying November. Is that still the target for completing the terminal?
I'll talk about the project enhancements in just a few minutes.
What capacity do these airlines need to break even? I guess they're all different as far as the carriers. What is usually the rule of thumb?
So the question is, what do the airlines need to break even? And you're right, it does depend on the carrier. The main carriers, United, Delta, American, they have a higher bar. Generally, it's a 75 to 80% load factor that they need. Avelo is a low-cost carrier, so they have a very low cost structure and operating expenses. So their cost per seat mile is about a third less than the Deltas and Americans. So their bar is a bit lower. I haven't been able to figure out exactly where it is, because right now they're only in the low 60% load factor in Santa Rosa. And they tell us we're not the best, but we're in the top 3 markets that they're serving out of Burbank for performance. And well, if it's 60% load and you're making money, great. They are talking about basing an airplane in Santa Rosa, so that must be a good enough factor for them. And if they base an aircraft, that does open up more markets for us. Avella's a little different. All of their crew gets home every night. So all of their flights have to be back in Burbank, and they don't put up crew in hotels. So they also just expanded on the East Coast, and they have a couple markets there. They do the same thing. And they're talking about setting us up as a mini version of that. So that could mean about 3 or 4 more destinations next year. Just throw this up there just for comparative purposes. When Alaska came in 2007, we've been without service since 2002 or 2001. And prior to that, our service fluctuated greatly. It was kind of an afterthought for the county and the airport, and it shows in the passenger numbers. But in 2007, with Alaska returning into our market and starting in 2008, we did 10 years of year-over-year growth. COVID is the killer of that, but everything's rebounded, and we're expecting that 625,000 passengers for the year. Just a little bit different comparison, just showing how much 2022 is growing. Alaska is by far our largest carrier at about 60%, American roughly 20%, and Avella is now at 20% as well. Amenities at the airport, we've got quite a few new food and beverage options. Of course, we have the Sky Lounge. They've been there for about 15 years. We just had a partner open up the flight deck, which is a wine tasting bar and a place to ship wine if people show up to the airport and they need to get home. That is located next to the airport. We just opened up a partner called Apple Spice in the gate. They opened up in July. So now we have food and beverages in the gate, which was a huge improvement. Cousteau on the Go is also located next to the terminal. Food truck that's used mostly by construction crews in the business center. And we're working on vending. We have a couple partners that want to come in. One wants to do a udon noodle bowl vending machine. We have Illy Coffee that wants to come in. And we're trying to find a pizza vending partner. We had one, but then they went bankrupt. But we're running into health code problems. The health department is saying you need to have a health permit for a vending machine. So that means a floor sink, special floors, a 3-compartment sink, and the whole works. So we've been working on that for almost a year. Very difficult. Ground transportation, quite a few different options, but the ones to highlight. Airport Express has been at the airport for over 40 years, taking passengers to Oakland and San Francisco. We've been working with them this summer for them to change their PUC license to be able to enable them to bring passengers to fly out of Santa Rosa. So once they get that finished, they'll be able to pick up people in San Rafael, Petaluma, Roanoke Park, and Santa Rosa, bring them to the airport and help them fly out. The other piece is we're working with Smart. There was a Smart shuttle in the airport area, but it was set up for business commuters, not flyers. They did 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, 5 days a week. Not a real good option. They're working on a microtransit solution, and they're hoping this fall to have that in place and be available 7 days a week for about 16 to 18 hours a day. Great. Going to how we talk to airlines. Every 2 years, the airport does a passenger study. When you buy a ticket, you put in your zip code, and we can get that information from DOT. So you might live in a 95403 zip code. You bought a ticket going from San Francisco to New York. We can pull that information and then tell the airlines how many people out of our area are flying, where they're going, and then we start building a case. We consider our catchment area, which is where we capture passengers, San Rafael North, and the 5-county area. We're not just a Sonoma County airport, we are a regional airport. We do get significant passengers out of Mendocino, Napa County, a little bit in Lake, and Marin's actually lower than we'd like, but Highway 101 construction has probably been our biggest hurdle on that. In that area, it's about 850,000 people. And in that group, It generates over 7,200 passengers per day, and that's each way. So there's significant travel coming out of the North Bay. And it's about a 60-40 split for local versus visitors. We then take that and calculate our top markets and tell them where we need to fly. We show them how many passengers per day going to that market. So the top one's Los Angeles at 1,100 passengers. In our peak season, we have 4 flights a day to LAX. But even at that peak, 84% of those passengers are using another airport. So there's still opportunity for us to increase frequency. And generally, you need a market with at least 60 to get a regional jet. The problem is a lot of airlines are not doing point-to-point new additions right now. So we definitely have the numbers, and we work with our airline partners all the time, trying to push it. The other piece that we have to work on with them is showing them how we fit in their business model. If you can't show them that, you'll never get their service, and there's no point in talking to an airline that you don't fit their business model. During the downturn, they got very good at revenue management. They used to fly a lot of things that didn't make sense. Now, if it doesn't fit that business model, they won't talk. The other piece to it is when we talk to them, there is a significant amount of traffic in San Francisco. We can dial down into the numbers. So when we were talking to Alaska about Hawaii, they already carry a lot of people to the Hawaiian Islands out of the Bay Area. We were able to show that it would only potentially impact 4 passengers a day because most of the people out of the North Bay were using somebody else. And so then that would be a captured new market for them. Try not to get too bored on the math. But it is a bit of an art. We leak about 93% of our total market to other airports. We will not be a San Jose. We will be a regional airport. San Francisco Bay Area has too much traffic. It's too big of a market. So we are looking for that convenience factor, 1 to 2 flights a day to the markets that our community wants. And we do know that we also have impacts. And so we have partnered with the Good Traveler program, and through our website and our parking app, you can do a carbon offset for your trip. And then our capital programs. Right now we have about 13 grants open with the FAA for about $50 million. Our future grant projects we're asking for about $78 million over the next 5 years. But the big ones that we're working on, the terminal, it's kind of a bad graphic for this thing, but the modular building, this is where we're constructing the new terminal. The addition that we did in 2008 in the original 1960s terminal. We're going from roughly 19,000 square feet prior to this work to a complete project with 56,000 square feet. The floor plan of the new space. This here is where the road is. We're building a new front to the building right now. This would be the entrance into the lobby. The ticket counters, we finished those last fall. This would be the entrance to the new TSA. TSA checkpoint would move here. It will be a full-size lane. We will be able to offer pre-check. It may not be all the time because we do have large gaps in the day where there's only 1 flight. And so it's hard for TSA to staff it up with 2 lanes. And then in those times, it'll be what they're doing now. You get the card, get some benefit, but not the full benefit. Then we'll have a new gate area with 236 seats, 4 new gate counters. The Apple Spice concession will move here. They'll be able to offer hot food. This is where passengers will come in from the aircraft. We will have 2 new bag belts. So all the bag claim will be coming inside. And our rental car counters will move here. And then everybody will come into the main lobby through a new corridor that just was completed. And it shows some progression on this. This is from last fall. So they're putting steel, putting up the trusses. This was from about 5 weeks ago. And this was as of this morning. So it is getting close. And going back to the question of when things will be done. Right now, all of this area, we're anticipating opening by the week of November 14th. So we're getting really close and things are starting to move very quickly. We're doing finishing work inside. We still have some work to do on getting the windows in. For Title 24 energy requirements, we have to do some louvers and we had some structural mounting problems. The final design, the weight increased to about $1,800 per, or 1,800 pounds per louver. We had to upgauge the steel because it was too thin for the original plan. Total project completion will be roughly the end of March. So we started work on this in October of 2020. So it'll have been about 30 months. Total project cost right now is about $42 million. And most of that is coming through FAA grants. We're going to be covering about $38 million of that through federal grants. And the remainder is coming from airport revenues. And then just, these will go fairly quickly, but pictures of the construction, the bag claim area, high vaulted ceilings. We're working with the museum. And we will have the Sopwith Camel chasing the Red Baron hanging in front of the ceiling. Those two airplanes they've got about a roughly 19-foot wingspan. So hopefully that'll be pretty cool when people come in and not just kind of, why do you have that? I think it's cool. I'm a pilot, so I'm a little biased. This is some pictures of the gate area. Again, the high ceilings, a lot of wood, exposed steel, concrete. So it's a little bit more on that industrial line feel. And took a picture from the roof. TSA areas. And since I was on the roof and we had a really cool view of the airfield, I get all of our partners. And then the next project we're hoping to start next year. We did a ramp construction project where we rebuilt this area in 2015. We need to rebuild these two spots here, and we're working to put 2 more spots just north of that. So in about 2 years, we will have 6 aircraft parking spots up from our 4 today. Just an engineer's rendering of it. And then we're also in design right now for a rental car facility. Right now they're scattered all over the airport. They have about 500 cars. They run through the airport. And we're looking at taking our current long-term lot, which is roughly here, shifting it to the east, building new spaces, and then building the facilities at the very far west end of the long-term A lot, dedicated about 200 plus spaces for the rental cars, and creating about 150 space overflow lot. It's where the sheriff's garden used to be. That is airport property, and we need it for cars now. It's just some renderings of that. And that's what I've got today. Any other questions?
I'm sure there's not going to be jetways, so how do you, from the time the passenger leaves the terminal to the stairwell, use that could be covered?
Let's see if we have a picture. You're correct. We will not have jetways at the airport. We avoided that because they're about $1 million a piece. And we have great weather here 90% of the time. This picture might show here. So the gate counters would be here in the new space, and passengers would go out this door on this wall. This is the walkway that'll go along the front of the building, and that'll go to all the aircraft. What we've done is we're installing a canopy system to cover that walkway, and it will extend to the north to in front of the tent. And then when we do the ramp work, we'll extend that to the farthest spot. So you'll at least be able to get to the nose of the aircraft where you walk up to the stairs covered. And so 3/4 of the way there. Yes, sir.
So what percentage of your power generation is going to come from solar?
100%. We already are 100% solar. So in February of this year, the airport commissioned a 880 kilowatt solar system. And right now, it actually generates more power than we use because we are anticipating the terminal coming online, the rental car facility. Well, the rental car facility without the car factor, because if they go all EVs, they need 5.8 megawatt. So what we've done is we now have our 6th largest airport tenants. So we lease buildings to large tenants. They are part of that solar system, and we still have a surplus for this growth.
Any impact of the earthquake on the airport at all?
Other than seeing my office walls moving, no.
Other than one?
My office walls moving.
Oh, yeah.
No, everything was fine, no damage, no issues. We did our emergency procedures, did inspections of the airfield, terminal facilities, and other facilities, and no cracking, nothing. The air traffic controllers were probably the most freaked out because they were 5 stories above ground, and it was a 1960s tower. That moved a little bit more than my office, but no damage at the tower either.
Is there gonna be a new tower with the new terminal? No.
Not with the terminal under the bill, the infrastructure law that was passed this year. There's money for airport towers, and we are working with the FAA to get into that program. And we're hoping in 4 to 5 years to build a new tower. That'll be about $12 million. Yes, sir.
Is it true that the government owns the property that the airport sits on? And if
Well, the county
so,
does.
what arrangements you have with them?
The property ownership of the airport is different. So the county bought land in 1939 to start an airport. The military came in and took it over for the war effort. And in 1947, it reverted the original land plus a significant amount of other lands back to the county in 1947. And in that reversionary agreement, it has to be maintained as an airport. And if the county does not want to maintain it as an airport, then there's a potential for another operator to come in and operate it. So it's not 100% clear. There are strings, and every year I take a new grant, those strings get extended. Yes, sir.
Are the air shows going to continue?
The air shows were put on by the Pacific Coast Air Museum, and we just partnered with them to make arrangements on the use of the airfield. It's doubtful that they'll do air shows again. And part of that, it's not because we don't want them at the airport. Over the last, well, prior to COVID, the last 5 years before COVID, the cost to put it on increased significantly. So they weren't seeing the return to support the museum. Everybody kept holding out their hands, the CHP, permit Sonoma, and so all those costs kept increasing, got to the point where the cost to put it on was about $350,000, and their return was like $10,000. So it just was not a good revenue generator for them. It was great community involvement for us, but they need to make money to support the museum. Prior to the downturn and those increasing costs, it generated enough profit off the event to run the museum for the year.
So without the show, how is the museum gonna support itself?
The museum's been doing smaller events, so they've done some dances. They do Hot Dog Thursday every Thursday, car shows, and some of their evening events. Before COVID, they were doing some swing dances. They can make more in that one night than they did for the air show. So they're trying to do more of that, but COVID really hurt their fundraising. So right now they're okay, but they're struggling really hard.
John, one question. You can show the market demand to get east, say Denver. It's just that the major carriers can't accommodate that smaller route right now. And you're
Yes.
not getting any sense on when they might, if at all, return to that market?
Denver said they would like to be back, or not Denver. United said they'd like to be back within 2 years. But with them leaving the market, we are going to be looking to other carriers. We're going to try and talk to Frontier. Southwest has been interested in the airport for 15 years. but we've been in an airport they could not serve.
Because they have a minimum, of what, 7 flights a day or something?
They have a minimum of 5 to 6 flights a day. Southwest is actually one of the most unionized airlines, and so they have to handle the airport stations with their staff. They can't contract it out like most of the other carriers. Right now, the only airline at the airport that has their airline employees is Alaska. Everybody else is a contracted employee. And we just couldn't support 6 flights a day. They've been doing work with their union contracts to lower that number during COVID. And so they've got a couple test airports where they're doing 3 or 4 flights a day. And most of those seem to have worked. But with the increases during COVID to leisure markets, we are now the largest market in California that don't serve. But we also can't support 7 flights a day. So it's an interesting dynamic. They're very good to meet with, but it's trying to get everything to work.
Okay, thank you, John. With a bottle of wine, a certificate of appreciation, and a photograph. That's part of it.
Got it.
Thank you. Well, thank you again.